They didn't argue. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't do anything wrong. And yet, the gate door closed. Anyway, if you're over 70 and planning to fly in 2026, I need you to listen very carefully because right now, seniors are being denied boarding at airports across the country, not because they broke the rules, but because the rules changed quietly and nobody made sure you knew. This isn't speculation. This is already happening. I've watched it happen. People who arrived early, had their tickets packed carefully, and still walked away from the gate confused, embarrassed, and heartbroken. And here's the most unsettling part. Experience no longer protects you. Flying for 20, 30, even 40 years does not shield you from these new rules. In fact, it can work against you because the habits that served you well for decades are now the very things getting seniors stopped at security and turned away at the gate. You might be thinking, I've flown my whole life. I know airports. I know the process, and I believe you. But what I need you to understand is this. The system, no longer exists in the same way. Between late 2025 and early 2026, documentation requirements tightened, airline discretion shrank, and security procedures shifted in ways that hit older travelers hardest. Not loudly, not with big announcements, but quietly through policy updates and enforcement changes that most people never saw coming. And when you don't know a rule exists, you can't defend yourself against it. That's how seniors are ending up stranded while planes take off without them. Tonight, I want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. Here's why this feels so unfair, and honestly, why it keeps so many people up at night once they realize what's happening. For decades, flying rewarded familiarity. You learned the rhythm. You learned what mattered and what didn't. You learned how to move through an airport with confidence. But the new environment doesn't care how many times you've flown. It cares about boxes being checked, forms being filed, and compliance being absolute. Gate agents and TSA officers now have far less flexibility than they did even 2 years ago. They're not allowed to make an exception. They're not allowed to say, it'll be fine this time. If something isn't exactly right, their hands are tied. And when that happens, the denial feels personal, even though it isn't. Seniors are especially vulnerable because many of these changes collide with things that naturally come with age. Older IDs, long-standing medical routines, mobility needs that don't look obvious, or medications you've taken safely for years. None of those are mistakes. But under the new rules, they can still stop you cold. That's why so many people are caught off guard. They didn't ignore the rules. They just never knew the rules had changed. Let me ground this in something real, because this isn't about hypotheticals or worst-case scenarios. Just recently, I watched a 73-year-old man arrive at the airport early for what should have been one of the happiest days of his life. He was flying to attend his daughter's wedding. He had his suit packed carefully, his ticket printed, his ride arranged. He'd flown countless times before. But when he reached security, his ID didn't meet the new federal requirements. He had no idea. Nobody had warned him, and the agent couldn't bend the rule. No matter how calm he stayed, no matter how long he'd been flying, that flight boarded without him. He missed the wedding, not because he was careless, not because he was irresponsible, but because the rules moved and he didn't know where they landed. I don't tell you that to scare you. I tell you that because it's preventable. Every single thing that went wrong for him can be avoided if you know what to look for and how to prepare before you ever set foot in the airport. That's exactly what we're going to do together. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the critical things seniors must know before flying in 2026. These aren't suggestions. These aren't nice-to-know tips. These are the rules that decide whether you fly or stay behind. I'll explain what changed, why it matters, and exactly what to do, so you're never put in a position where someone at a counter tells you there's nothing they can do. You don't need to be anxious. You don't need to be overwhelmed. You just need to be informed, because once you understand how the system works now, you can move through it confidently again. And by the time we're done, you'll know how to protect yourself from the most common and most painful mistakes seniors are making without even realizing it. The first thing you need to understand, and this is where more seniors are getting stopped than anywhere else, is that identification rules are no longer forgiving. For years, a standard driver's license was enough. You showed it, they glanced at it, and you moved on. That era is over. As these new rules take full effect, the system doesn't care how long you've held that license or how many times it worked before. All it cares about is whether it meets the exact federal standard required for air travel. And here's the part that's catching people completely off guard. Many seniors renewed their licenses long ago before these standards existed and have no idea their ID is now considered invalid for flying. They arrive confident, even early, only to be told at security that their license cannot get them through. The shock is immediate. The panic follows. And once that line is crossed, there is no last-minute fix. If your license is not compliant, TSA cannot let you proceed. It's not a warning, it's not a delay, it's a full stop. That's why this rule is quietly breaking trips apart. You may think, I renewed my license, I'm fine. But unless you've checked it recently, you don't actually know, and guessing is no longer safe. Here's exactly what matters now. Your driver's license must be Real ID compliant. That means it must have a specific marking, usually a star on the front. Not all stars look the same, and that's part of the confusion. Sometimes it's a star inside a circle. Sometimes it's a star cut out of the state shape. But if there is no star at all, your license will not get you through TSA for a domestic flight. Period. I've watched people argue politely, insist they've flown before, even pull up old boarding passes on their phone. None of it matters. The agent isn't judging you. They're checking a requirement, and if it's not met, they cannot override it. Now, if your license does not have that star, you are not out of options, but you are out of time if you wait. A valid passport or passport card will always work. Always. But many seniors don't carry one because they've never needed to. If that's you, then the only solution is to visit the DMV and upgrade your license. And this is critical. Do not wait. Appointments are already booking weeks, sometimes months in advance as more people realize what's happening. This is not something to put on a list for later. Take your license out today. Look at it. If you don't see that star, make a plan immediately. I've seen too many people learn this lesson at the airport. And the cost isn't just money, it's missed moments you can't get back. Now let's talk about another area where confusion is causing unnecessary denials. Medical documentation. There's a myth floating around that once you pass a certain age, you need a doctor's note just to fly. That is not true. Airlines cannot deny you boarding simply because you're over 70. Age alone is not a medical condition. But, and this is important, there are specific situations where documentation is now required, and those rules tightened quietly in late 2025. If you need supplemental oxygen, if you rely on a wheelchair beyond normal walking distances, or if you have a condition that could reasonably require medical attention during a flight, airlines now require medical clearance in advance. Not at the gate, not at check-in. In advance, this is where people get tripped up because the process isn't clearly explained and every airline uses slightly different language. One might call it a medical information form. Another might call it a special service request. But they all want the same thing: confirmation from your doctor that you are fit to fly. Here's how you handle this without stress. If you know you need oxygen, special assistance, or you have a condition that could raise questions, call the airline at least 48 to 72 hours before your flight. When you call, don't explain your entire medical history. Just say this exact sentence: I need to submit medical clearance documentation for my upcoming flight. Can you email me the required form? That's it. They will send you the form. You take it to your doctor, they sign it, and you send it back within the required time window. Once it's on your reservation, the gate agent can see it. There's no guessing, no judgment call, no last-minute denial. And if you're thinking, I'm mostly fine, but I do use a cane, or I have a heart condition, but it's controlled, this is where I want you to err on the side of caution. It is far better to have documentation you don't end up needing than to need it and not have it. I've seen passengers turned away because a gate agent felt there was a risk and no clearance was on file. The agent didn't want to deny them, but without documentation, they had no choice. Preparation is what protects you here. When the paperwork is done ahead of time, flying after 70 can still be smooth, dignified, and safe. Now, we need to talk about something that feels small but causes enormous problems at security: prescription medications. This is one of those areas where habits that worked for years are now working against seniors. For convenience, many people use weekly pill organizers or small travel cases. They're practical, they're familiar. And as of 2026, they can also get your medication confiscated. TSA has tightened enforcement around prescription drugs, especially controlled substances and liquid medications. The issue isn't that you're carrying medicine. It's that TSA must be able to immediately verify that the medication belongs to you and is legally prescribed. A pill organizer doesn't do that. A plastic bag doesn't do that. Without an original prescription label showing your name, the medication name, and the prescribing doctor, the officer has no way to confirm what those pills are. And when they can't confirm it, they don't take chances anymore. I've seen seniors pulled aside, bags opened, medications questioned, and pills taken away. Not because the traveler did anything wrong, but because the packaging didn't meet the standard. That's a terrifying moment, especially when the medication is something you rely on daily. Here's how you protect yourself. Every prescription medication you bring through security should be in an original pharmacy labeled bottle. If you don't want to carry a full month's supply, ask your pharmacist for a duplicate labeled bottle with just the amount you need for your trip. Most pharmacies will do this at no cost if you explain you're traveling. Keep those medications in your carry-on bag. Never in checked luggage. Bags get delayed. Bags get lost. Your heart medication, blood pressure pills, or diabetes medication cannot disappear with a suitcase. For liquid medications like insulin or liquid antibiotics, you are allowed to bring more than the standard limit, but you must declare them. Don't hide them and hope no one notices. Walk up to the TSA officer and calmly say, "I have medically necessary liquids in my bag that exceed the standard limit." They'll test them, which takes a couple of minutes, and then you're on your way. One more thing that makes this process dramatically smoother: carry a printed copy of your prescription or a simple note from your doctor, especially if you use injectables like insulin pens. It's not legally required, but it eliminates hesitation. I've watched 20-minute delays vanish instantly because a passenger had one piece of paper ready. This isn't about suspicion, it's about verification. And when you make verification easy, the stress disappears. Let's move forward to security itself, because this is where many seniors feel the most anxiety. Everyone talks about TSA PreCheck, and yes, it's a wonderful program. Shoes stay on, belts stay on, laptops stay in bags. But here's what almost nobody tells you. If you are 75 or older, you already receive certain accommodations even in the regular screening line. This policy has been in place for a while, yet most seniors don't know it exists. Travelers 75 and older are allowed to keep their shoes and light jackets on during standard screening. You may still need to remove a belt with a large buckle, but the shoes stay on. This isn't a favor. It's official policy, and you don't have to wait for someone to offer it. When you reach the checkpoint, simply let the officer know your age and that you'll be keeping your shoes on. They'll guide you through. It makes a difference, especially if bending, balancing, or lifting your feet is uncomfortable or risky. If you're under 75 but still over 70, this is where TSA PreCheck becomes a powerful tool. For a relatively small cost spread over 5 years, it removes the most physically demanding parts of security screening. Less rushing, less lifting, less standing in awkward positions. And here's an insider detail many people miss. Some credit cards reimburse the entire fee. Before you pay, check your card benefits. You may already be entitled to PreCheck without realizing it. Whether you use the age-based accommodation or PreCheck, the goal is the same: to reduce stress, reduce physical strain, and keep the process predictable. Security doesn't have to feel like an obstacle course. When you know what you're allowed to do and how to ask for it, you move through with confidence instead of anxiety. There's another protection seniors have that almost no one explains clearly. And because it isn't announced, well, many people never use it. Pre-boarding. This is where I see unnecessary stress, exhaustion, and even injuries happen. And it breaks my heart every time. Airlines are required by federal law to allow passengers who need extra time or assistance to board before general boarding begins. That includes many seniors. But here's the problem. They don't always say it plainly over the loudspeaker, and a lot of older travelers feel awkward asking. Please hear me when I say this. Pre-boarding is not cutting the line, and it is not taking something you didn't earn. It exists for safety. It exists to protect you. From years of watching boarding unfold, I can tell you with absolute certainty that crews want seniors who need extra time to board early. We want you settled, comfortable, and secure before the aisle fills with rushing passengers and swinging bags. It makes the flight safer for you and smoother for everyone else. You qualify for pre-boarding if you need extra time to get down the jet bridge. If you have trouble lifting or stowing a bag, if you use a cane or walker, if walking long distances is difficult, or even if you simply move more slowly and feel unsteady in crowds. Age by itself isn't the qualifier. Need is. And many people over 70 do need that extra time, even if they don't like admitting it. Here's exactly what to say at the gate. And this matters because wording removes hesitation. Walk up calmly and say, "I'd like to request pre-boarding because I need extra time to get settled." That's it. No explanation, no apology, no medical details. The gate agent will mark it and invite you to board during the pre-boarding phase, which happens before general groups are called. There is no charge. It does not affect your seat. It does not inconvenience anyone, and it can prevent a fall, a panic moment, or pure exhaustion before the flight even begins. I once watched a couple in their early 70s wait until their boarding group was called because they didn't want to be a bother. The husband used a cane. By the time they reached their row, the aisle was packed, people were impatient, and he nearly lost his balance trying to lift their bag into the overhead bin. If they had boarded 5 minutes earlier, there would have been space, calm, and crew members ready to help without pressure. That's the difference pre-boarding makes. It's not about privilege, it's about dignity and safety. If this is you, please use it. You're not asking for special treatment. You're using a protection that exists for a reason. Now, let's talk about mobility devices because this is another area where the process changed and not knowing what to expect can feel unsettling. If you use a cane, walker, wheelchair, or any mobility device, TSA updated screening procedures recently, and seniors are often surprised by what happens. Your device may be swabbed for explosives. It may go through a separate scanner. You may be directed to a different screening area. None of this means you're in trouble. None of it is personal. It's standardized procedure. But when you don't expect it, it can feel intrusive or alarming. That's why preparation matters. The moment you arrive at security, tell the officer, "I use a mobility device and need assistance with screening." Those words signal the process immediately and get you directed to the right place instead of being rushed or confused. If you can walk through the metal detector, they may ask you to do so while your device is screened. If you cannot stand or walk safely, you do not have to. You are allowed to remain seated in your wheelchair during screening. TSA will conduct a pat-down while you're seated. This is your right. And if anyone hesitates or seems unsure, you can calmly say, "I need to remain seated for screening due to mobility limitations." If there is still confusion, ask for a supervisor. Supervisors are trained specifically on these accommodations and will ensure the process is handled correctly and respectfully. This is not causing trouble. This is ensuring the rules are followed as they are written. One small detail that can make this smoother. If your walker or wheelchair is collapsible, collapse it before you reach the scanner if you're able to. It helps the process move faster. And if you need help doing that, ask. TSA officers and airline staff can assist. You do not need to struggle or rush. The biggest mistake seniors make here is trying to push through discomfort to avoid drawing attention. That's when stress escalates and mistakes happen. When you communicate clearly and use the phrases that trigger the correct procedures, the experience becomes calm, predictable, and far less intimidating. Mobility challenges do not disqualify you from flying, but silence can make the process harder than it needs to be. Now, we need to talk about wheelchair assistance because this is one of the most misunderstood services at the airport, and misunderstanding it is causing seniors to miss flights they should have easily made. If you think wheelchair assistance is something you ask for when you arrive at the airport, that's where the problem starts. In today's system, that's often too late. Airlines no longer staff wheelchair services on the assumption that people will just show up and need help. These services are scheduled in advance through third-party providers, and staffing levels are based almost entirely on pre-requests. When a senior arrives without having requested assistance ahead of time, there may simply be no one immediately available. And when that happens, the wait can stretch from 10 minutes to 30, sometimes longer. I have personally seen people miss boarding because they were still waiting for a wheelchair escort that was never prearranged. It's frustrating. It feels unfair, and it's completely preventable. If you need wheelchair assistance, even if you can walk short distances, you must request it when you book your ticket or at least 48 hours before your flight. This part is non-negotiable. Now, when you're booking online, look for a section labeled Special Services or Accessibility Requests and select Wheelchair Assistance. If you're booking by phone, say very clearly, I need wheelchair assistance from check-in to the gate and from the gate to baggage claim on arrival. Be specific. The system needs to know exactly where you need help. If your ticket is already booked and you didn't request it, call the airline as soon as possible and add it to your reservation. Do not assume you'll sort it out at the airport. That assumption is what's costing seniors their seats. There's another misconception I want to clear up because it stops people from asking for help when they truly need it. Wheelchair assistance is free on all U.S. airlines. Free. It's protected under federal law. You are not taking advantage of anyone. You are not inconveniencing the staff. You are using a service designed to keep you safe. Airports are massive now. Gates are farther apart than they used to be. Even strong, healthy people underestimate how exhausting it can be to walk from curb to gate, especially with security lines and time pressure. From everything I've seen, it is far better to request assistance than to push yourself and risk falling, becoming disoriented, or arriving at the gate completely drained. If you choose to tip the attendant, that's your decision. But it is never required. The service itself is your right. You've earned it. Use it without guilt. There's one more layer to this that often goes unspoken, and that's invisible disabilities. Not every condition shows up as a cane, a wheelchair, or a walker. Many seniors live with chronic pain, arthritis, breathing difficulties, balance issues, cognitive changes, or anxiety in crowded environments. These challenges are real, even if others can't see them. And the law recognizes that you are entitled to accommodations, even if your disability isn't obvious. The problem is that airlines and TSA cannot offer what they don't know you need. They're not allowed to assume. That means you have to speak up. But speaking up doesn't mean oversharing or explaining your entire medical history. If you need extra time, a quieter process, help navigating crowds, or early boarding because of an invisible condition, you can ask for it. Use simple, direct language. You can say, I have a disability that isn't immediately visible and I need accommodation. Then state what you need. Extra time to board, assistance through security, seating closer to the aisle or bathroom. These are considered reasonable accommodations. Reasonable means they don't disrupt the flight or compromise safety. And most requests seniors make fall well within that boundary. What's not reasonable is being expected to suffer in silence or push yourself beyond what's safe just to avoid drawing attention. The system is built to accommodate you, but only if you activate it. I want you to hear this clearly because it matters. Asking for accommodation is not a weakness. It's not complaining. It's not admitting defeat. It's using the protections that exist so you can travel safely and with dignity. Too many seniors endure unnecessary stress because they believe they should just manage the way they always have. But the environment has changed. The rules have changed. And adapting is not failure. It's wisdom. When you communicate your needs calmly and early, the entire experience shifts. What could have been overwhelming becomes structured. What could have been humiliating becomes routine. And what could have ended in a missed flight becomes just another step along the journey. there's one simple thing I wish more seniors knew to do, and it's something flight crews quietly appreciate far more than you realize. If you're over 70 and traveling alone, tell a flight attendant during boarding, not loudly, not dramatically, just a calm, friendly sentence as you step onto the plane. Hi, I'm traveling alone today, and I wanted to let you know in case I need a little assistance. That's it. That single sentence changes everything behind the scenes. It doesn't put a label on you. It doesn't make you a problem. It simply gives the crew awareness. And awareness is what allows us to keep you safe without hovering, without embarrassing you, and without treating you like you can't handle yourself. It means if turbulence hits, someone checks in sooner. If you're standing up a little longer than usual, someone notices. If you need help reaching a bag or getting to the restroom, you're not struggling in silence. You're not being watched constantly, but you're not invisible either. In my years of flying, I've seen situations where that quiet heads up made all the difference during an unexpected delay, a rough landing, or a medical moment that needed fast attention. You're not asking for special treatment. You're creating a safety net. And when you're traveling alone, that matters more than most people realize. Before we close, let me quickly bring everything together so it's clear in your mind, because clarity is what prevents panic when you walk into the airport. You now know that your ID must meet the current federal standard, and you know exactly how to check it before you leave home. You understand when medical documentation is required and when it isn't, and how to get it handled before your travel day instead of at the gate. You know how to pack prescription medications so they don't become a problem at security, and how to declare medical liquids without stress. You know what accommodations you're entitled to at TSA based on age and when programs like PreCheck are worth using. You understand that pre-boarding is a right when you need extra time, not a favor you're asking for. You know what to expect if you use a mobility device, how wheelchair assistance really works, and why requesting it early matters. And you know that invisible disabilities are still valid, still protected, and still deserving of accommodation. None of this is about fear. It's about preparation. When you know how the system works now, not how it used to work, you take control back. Flying after 70 is still absolutely possible. It just requires knowledge, confidence, and the willingness to advocate for yourself calmly and early. I want to leave you with this because it's the most important shift you can make as a senior traveler. These accommodations, these rules, these protections, they exist because you deserve them. They are not loopholes. They are not favors. They are acknowledgments of reality. Airports are louder, larger, and faster than they used to be. Security is stricter. Policies are less flexible. None of that reflects your worth or your ability. It simply means the environment changed. And adapting to that change is not giving something up. It's claiming what's already yours. Too many seniors feel embarrassed asking for help, or worry they're slowing things down, or think they should manage like they always have. But managing today looks different than it did 20 years ago. Today, managing means preparing early, speaking clearly, and using the systems designed to keep you safe. When you do that, flying doesn't feel intimidating. It feels structured, predictable, even calm. I've watched confident, prepared seniors move through airports with ease, while others, just as capable, struggled simply because no one explained the new rules to them. Knowledge is the difference. And now you have it. Before we part, I want to hear from you. What is your biggest concern about flying as a senior? Is it security lines, long walks, medical equipment, fear of being rushed, or something else entirely? Share it in the comments. I read them, and they help shape what I cover next, so this information stays practical and useful. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone you care about, a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a friend who's planning a trip. This kind of knowledge can prevent heartbreak, missed milestones, and unnecessary stress. And if you want more calm, clear guidance like this, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps this information reach the people who truly need it. Thank you for spending this time with me.